you drilled and all that stuff, and you had military history. And we went to summer camp at Fort Leonard Wood, and you sweated a lot. It was an Engineer Corps ROTC unit, and we were the largest ROTC Army ROTC unit in the country at that time. And I took the physical for flying, and I passed it. I think there was something like 12 or 15 guys that took the physical, and I was the only one that passed. McNamara halted aviation recruiting. And so I stayed at Fort Belvoir after I got out of Officer Basic for about 2 months, I think. And it was just hodgepodge duties and stuff like that. I had an exceptional instructor pilot. He was outstanding, and if he couldn't get the across to you one way, he'd figure out another way to get across to you. And so first time I went out, I didn't think I could hold it in a 5-acre field in a hover, So he worked with me, and that was interesting. We took helicopter rides at Fort Leonard Wood, and he wore jobsters at that. It was a low boot, and he was flying an H-19 in the Army, and so the only thing I could see from the cargo hold was his boots. And so one day we had a weather day and we were not flying, and I asked him, "Do you always wear those boot jobsters?" And he said yes. And I said, when I took my first helicopter flight in ROTC, the guy that was flying had those boots on, or that kind of boot, and we talked about it a little bit, and he was the guy that flew me on my first helicopter ride. We moved from a H-23, Hiller H-23, which is like a 13, like the match helicopter, on TV MASH. Well, the H-23 was different, but it was similar. It was a bubble, and two people sat in it, and we moved to H-19s at that time. It was an old Sikorsky helicopter, and we called it a hog because it had so much weight and so little power that we used to say you couldn't pull your hat off your head in a hot day, but it got by. On our first night over cross country, they sat us down and said, now when you're flying and you don't know where you are, if you're lost, don't worry about it, because there's towns all over and they have the name of the town on the water tower, and you just fly it so where you can see the water tower, and then you find out where you are on the map. So we didn't have any trouble at that time. The guy I was with was from Fort Worth. He was a TCU graduate, and we didn't have any trouble. Got into the staging area, and this one couple of warrant officer trainees were lost, and so they got on the radio and they said, where are you? We don't know. Well, can you see a water tower anyway? Yeah, we can see one. So they said, well, go fly to the water tower and fly around it and see where you are. And there was a long silence. And he said, "Well, where are you?" And he said, "Well, as near as we can figure, we're at water system approved Alabama." We had dropped off a bunch of Vietnamese, and we were advised that it was probably a hot LZ, and there wasn't anything going on there, but we landed on the mess tables. They were having their supper, and we landed right in the middle of them, and then took off right away. And I got over a tree line, and I got my hydraulics shot out. So, you know, it's hard work to hold it, and as I landed right over this tree line, and my roommate, Jerry Free, just a prince of a man, and he came in right behind me and picked us up, and we got out. I wasn't on the ground but a couple of minutes. The second incident was a little more serious. We had lifted the 173rd Airborne Brigade of the 82nd Airborne one evening. It was right at the bottom of War Zone D, and there was an old French fort, and the Dong Nai River was running this way, and I don't know what the name of the other river was, but we put them in there, and so I was flying flare standby that night. They had airdrop flares if there was any ground contact, and the flare standby got up fast and got the flares going, and then the Air Force would come in with more flares. And so the night before, Jake and I were on flare standby, and this colonel, I don't know what his name was, he was with the 82nd Airborne, I think, and he decided that he was going back to the States, and he wanted to go visit his troops. So we flew out there, and there had been rumors of shots fired. So we came in and turned the lights off, and the running lights, and then we turned the instrument panels off, so there was no light, and we landed and got him out, and he wanted to. We sat on the ground there for seemed like a year, but anyway, he finally got on and we got out, and the next morning I had a resupply flying in there, and I came in normal flight pattern, and just off the ground a little ways. That's where you didn't want to lose your tail rotor there, because you were pulling pitch in, and when you pull pitch in, you got more torque. And so we were landing, and somebody shot the tail rotor out, the hanger bearing on the tail boom, and it just started turning right away. So the answer to that is you dump your pitch. So I dumped the pitch, and it kind of landed cattywampus. They started getting Mike models into the Vietnam, and they were actually the running gear and rotor systems for a Cobra, but they were testing them on the A model Hueys, and so John and I were flying to the Arbin 25th Division, and we got up there and landed, and I took off going to the West mess hall, and I turned around and John was just standing up on the roof of the helicopter, just draped over the rotor head. And I said, "John, what's the matter?" And he was just pale as he could be. And he said, "Come up here and look at this." So I got up there, and they had put Teflon on the where the lubrication joints were on the B model, and all those Teflon bearings had pulverized. We didn't have any bearings at all, and so I helped him down off the aircraft, and then we went in and I phoned the 118th, and I said, we gotta get picked up. We got an aircraft up here that doesn't have any bearings in the rotor head. And so the old man and a whole bunch of people come out there, and I don't know what they did with the aircraft. Well, they picked it up and hauled it someplace, but that was scary, because a couple more minutes we'd have crashed.
When did you transport Aunt Margaret?
I can't remember what it was. She was on a USO trip, and visiting. She was just visiting troops by herself out in different places, and so she had a staff officer from Bennett Battalion at that time flying her around, and he had maintenance problems with him. So I was there, and I said, "Well, I can take you," and she said, "Let's go." So I flew her, and she was, for not having seen a round-eyed girl for a while, it was something.
How did you benefit from the experience then?
Well,
what did you learn?
Just knowing people and knowing how to work with people, and how to lead.